Hey guys, today I'm going to be reviewing Zombicide Invader by CMON. Now this is a game for 1 to 6 players, and it's just like your typical Zombicide, but different. It's in sci-fi, it's got a few streamlined rules. Let's dig into the details. I'll show you a little bit about how to play it, and then we'll get into my thoughts on the game. This is upsetting. This is rude. Is an issue with Zombicide as a genre that has never been talked about or discussed or fixed or even talked about in the rulebook. Obviously, I'm in love with it and I want to marry it. You are dead, game over. Pack up your bags, play a different game, set up another scenario, retry this scenario, go bake a cake. I don't care. You lost. I know I nitpick. I know I focus on the minutia. I know I get super angry about dice, but at the end of the day, this is a fun game. So why give you what you used to get for free when you can sell it as DLC? I mean, microtransactions. I mean, oh crap. Alright, so before we get into the review itself, I want to explain the game, I want to unbox the game, I want to explain this for a little bit. So as you guys know, I paint miniatures, as you can see, and I haven't done a video in a while, and that's because I've been so swamped with these new games and the reviews and the Kickstarters, and it's just been crazy. That being said, I have filmed all of these. I've filmed these, and so I'm going to actually edit them and put them together, but I make 2 videos, one video on Tuesday and one video on Saturday on my channel each week. And so when I can fit these guys in, I totally will. But until then, you'll have to just, either wait or head over to Patreon, link in the description below, and they'll have early access to all of these. Because as I finish them, I'm going to post them on Patreon, because I'm not, beholden to like an algorithm there that, wants certain things to happen, like regular scheduled programming. So anyway, I got a ton of this stuff. I got, just some Kingdom Death Monster. I got some Eternal War. I got some Batman. I got a whole bunch of stuff. So we're going to be doing that over on Patreon. Again, link in the description below if you just want to support the channel or perhaps see some early content. You can always cancel after you see it anyway. This isn't up right away, but it will be. I might put Lilith up first. I might put her up first. And she's probably going to be the longest when it comes to all of that, but it's going to be a long video on that anyway. All right, let's go on and get into the unboxing here. And this is just a real quick thing, just because I kind of want to show you the storage. It'll give you some context on what I'm doing with the storage, and I guess just in general, when I mention that in a review, you'll kind of be able to remember that, hey, these are loose, stuff like that, because I've seen it. Now I made a mess. All right, so I got this in here. This is the main Kickstarter exclusive stuff. You have to refer to this separately for all the separate rules for that, and you got the rule book. Let's see, and then we got the main thing here. This is going to be all the miniatures. So in here, we have, the tray and the minis underneath. I have a lot of the character cards just kind of strewn throughout all of this. If you take this flimsy tray out, then you got the rest. And then you got the cards, a lot of the cards here anyway. There are more in the stretch goal box, but I'm not going to deal with that for this video. So then in here I got some tokens and some other stuff there, and then you got the tiles, and that's it. All right, so let's go ahead and talk a bit about how this game plays, and then we'll review it. Okay, so we start with your characters. They're either going to be a soldier or a civilian. The difference is the soldier can only search within a security room, which are the red rooms, and they tend to have more armor. Alternatively, civilians tend to have a little bit less armor, and they can search anywhere. Other than that, they are the exact same. You'll start with your blue skill because you have 0 XP. As you kill things and gain XP, you will increase in color and therefore threat level, and you'll gain new actions. So once you gain the first, more on that, the first 7 skills, or first 7 XP, you will gain +1 action. You go from 3 actions to now 4 actions. Once you get to 19, you will then be able to pick one of the 2 orange and get that, say +1 move action. Then, eventually, you will get to 43. And I say eventually, but this does not always happen, trust me. In fact, normally you don't want it to happen. And you can pick a final skill. Now, at this point, you can loop around and get the other missing ones, but you get the idea. Then you have 2 hand slots and 2 armor slots and a backpack where you can hold items. Now, looking a bit closer at items, you can see that you have a noise icon or a silent icon, depending on whether or not it makes noise. If it makes noise when you use it, then you place a noise token there, and zombies or xenos will always go to whatever is noisiest. You can see the slot it is, whether it is the armor slot or the hand slot, whether it is ranged or melee, and whether or not it can be used outside or not. Bullets cannot be used outside of buildings, whereas anything with the electricity symbol can. You will then see a range, minimum and maximum. You will then see the amount of dice you roll, what you have to roll on the dice to hit, and how much damage it does. When dealing damage, you either do 1, 2, or you kill everything. And the difference is that if you hit things multiple times with a 1, it's still just 1 damage. If you hit things multiple times with a 2, it's still just 2 damage. The only way to go above that is with concentrated fire. So concentrated fire is where you're only attacking 1 unit. So if you were to get 3 hits with the cattle prod here, normally you would do 3 1 damage things. So if there were 3 workers there, you'd kill all 3. If there's a tank there that you can't get to them because they're lower in the target priority order, then you can do a concentrated fire, and those 3 hits would do 3 damage to the tank alone, and you would be able to kill the tank. Now, the only thing I wanted to point out is the dual wield icon, one for melee, one for ranged. All this means is if you had 2 cattle prods, you could attack with both of them and pool the dice. So you'd roll 4 instead of 2. If you had 2 SMGs, again, you would roll 4 instead of 2. All right, now on the board, you'll have your characters, and they have little rings to show kind of who's who, so you don't get lost in all the gray, especially if you don't paint, or if you do paint and they look similar, or whatever. Either way, you can do 3 actions, and your actions are move, which is just 1 space, and you can only really move if you have, if you're alone. If you have enemies in your zone, like if you were here, you would take 2 actions to move, 1 plus the amount that are there. Now, so you can move, that would be 1, and then you can shoot, you can loot if you're in a security, or search for an item if you're in a security zone. As a soldier, as a civilian, you can search anywhere that's inside of a building that's not a corridor, which is pretty obvious. You can pick up objective tokens, see if those are useful or not, and then additionally, when things want to actually attack, you will be able to attack and roll your dice accordingly. It's all just rolling dice. More on that later. Now, you'll notice that there are these mold tokens, not tokens, tile kind of placement things here. And they are, you get quite a few of them. So you get quite a few of them here, and they can go from a spoiler abomination. So as he kind of stomps around, he lays these down as he goes. And they're bad, and you can flip them over and burn them if you have a flamethrower or something like that. And if they connect, if 2 spawn points connect, then it's through active mold, then it is game over. Additionally, there are cards that will spawn things on each mold spot, so you don't really want these spreading around. They'll also destroy any objective tokens, which again is bad. So if this went here, and if this token was something you needed, then it's game over, you're done. More on that later. Now, in general, the way enemies come in is they actually come in through these spawn points here. And so all you do is for each spawn point, you draw a card, and you spawn what should be there. In this case, workers. Let's just get some here. There you go. And then you will spawn, let me get a little bit closer. You'll spawn based off of the person who is the highest color. So if somebody is already orange, it doesn't matter if you're blue, you're going to be spawning 8 workers. Now that's just for this area. Then you go to the next one, and you spawn the next one. In this case, hunters. Again, the amount depends on the highest person. Unlike older Zombicides, you do not spawn rooms. You just spawn whatever the spawn points are, and then that is it. You are done. Now, there are no doors on here, but if there were doors, you would be able to open them and close them with an action. You don't have to try. Again, unlike older Zombicides, in this one, you just simply open them. Now, if you want to go outside, you're probably going to die because you can't breathe the atmosphere. So the way to get around that is actually to be in an O2 room. If you're in an O2 room, you can spend an action to simply gain an oxygen tank. Then you can put that in your body slot, and then you can exit. To exit, you simply go out of an airlock. So you can get out of these airlocks just fine. Now you'll notice that there's a robot here and a turret here, and they add a few different things. The turret, if you're in the same zone, you can essentially man the turret and mow down some zombies however you wish. They have kind of their own stats here. You can see them here on what it is that they do. Otherwise, if you're not adjacent, but you have the skill, such as remote control bot, you can, well, as it suggests, remote control the bot. So you have the bot here, and you can, you can spend an action to have it do an action that can be move, that can be attack. Just depends. Again, what it can do is on the card, and then on the back it shows technically what actions it can do, like move, shoot, melee. Now, when you activate those, you will put down an activation token here. And all this shows is that the zombies will actually care about these. So the zombies or Xeno will ignore these normally unless they have this token. In other words, if they're actively shooting, they're going to care. Otherwise, they don't tend to care about them. Now, I mentioned that it's game over if the mold touches each other from one spawn point to another. It also ends if any one person dies. So if Joe Blow over here has some bad dice luck and he dies, he's right next to the A-bomb, well, game over. Pack your bags, play a different game, set up a new one, whatever you wish. Additionally, if you can't because the mold gets rid of the objective, again, you will lose the scenario. To win the scenario, you have to do whatever the mission says. Typically, it involves flipping objective tokens, such as this, and getting to an exit or something like that. Now, this is something I really like. I really like the change in spawn. I like just seeing, here's the enemy, here's the quantity, that's for that spawn, that's done. You're not spawning different rooms, you're not opening a door and then spawning 4 different things, so I'm doing this room, then this room, this room. None of that breaks the flow of the game at all, and spawning is just done at the very end of the rounds, and then you're done, and you're good to go. They also numbered them here for some kind of difficulty stuff, but Zombicide's so swingy anyway, and so much depends on something other than the card necessarily, like the heroes you're doing that. That's less useful, but this streamlined spawning I really like. Additionally, I really like the Falcon gun and the kind of bot here. I like being able to move them around and remote control them, and it just kind of adds a little bit of variety. I like being able to manually control the turret and having it in place and they can't move around. It's just generally kind of neat. I also like the inside and outside to a degree. I like the fact that you need to get an oxygen to go outside. It's essentially a mini investigation. However, what I don't like is the fact that once outside, you can only really use melee weapons and these 4 items. And these are the only 4 items you got, and you don't get any more, and so you see them over and over again. And they are the exact same guns as the other one, but they'll have like 1 more range or something like that. Now, the game board itself is actually really, really well, I really like how it looks. It's not to scale, they rarely are, so your people are kind of giants in a playground here. You just kind of have to get over it, but I really like the art theme, and I think it works really well, both from the art on the characters, to the guns and items, to the enemies, to, just the map tiles. It all works really good, and it goes to show that the Zombicide game mechanics can really apply to pretty much anything as long as it involves shooting and tooting, I guess. Which is nice. I like the change. I like the different theme. It does, any kind of art and theme just fundamentally feels different, and so I appreciate that. So art, great. All right, now here's something that's important to talk about, I feel, especially in any CMON Kickstarter review. Now, while I am reviewing this based off just the core game, I have played both. So I've played a couple with just the core box stuff, and I've played a couple with just the Kickstarter stuff added in. So I can kind of talk about the pros and cons of both. I haven't done any of the expansions yet. If you want me to review one of the expansions, just let me know in the comments below if you'd like a expansion specific review, and I might look into doing that. What I will say here is these are, starting characters, starting items, all of that stuff. The problem is, and this happens with every Zombicide and really most CMON games that have a lot of player character expansions, so I suspect Death May Die might be quite similar. I'll let you know when I get it. But is that the stretch goals break the game. The enemies, the heroes, everything you were excited about was a stretch goal. When you actually use it, it makes the game worse. And here's what I mean by that. So you have, let's say, Mitsuki here, right, which is a civilian. And she starts out with this skill, Remote Control Bot, and then she may get a free machine action or move action, or she might get, one free ranged action, or even the ability to sprint if you're all the way at 43 XP, and then 2 health. Now, here are two other civilians that are part of the stretch goals. Now, if you notice him, she starts with the Remote Control Bot. He starts with the Remote Control All. Inherently better, no ifs, ands, or buts. He also has one more armor than her. Again, default better, no ifs, ands, or buts. They both get the plus free action here, and then you get the plus free machine action here. Here she can get a move action where he can buff people in his space, and then you get another free action or move, and then here. So they kind of break up once you're at the 43, but again, this doesn't even happen at half the games that you end up playing, at least typically with mine. It depends on how objective-oriented you are here. But with the extra armor and the extra blue skill right from the get-go, this early game especially is just going to be easier. He is inherently better. You should never pick her over him unless you are planning on, for whatever reason, getting the plus free move action in orange or going all the way to the red. And even then, I guarantee there's another stretch goal character that has this stuff and it's still inherently better. Then you have Val over here. Now, she only has 2, but she starts out with a +1 zone per move. In other words, when you move, you're not moving 1, you're moving 2 for every action you do. So if you have 3 actions, you moved 6 spaces. Now, any of the many objectives or any of the many, scenarios that share this objective where you have to get objective tokens. If your goal is to get objective tokens, which trust me is most of them, if you're doing that and you pick her, you've won the game. It doesn't matter. You could have everybody stay at the exit and just have her sprint across, and I guarantee she can get away from everything. She can stay one step ahead of everybody, and she can just grab all the objective tokens and come back. You can game of this fundamentally breaks it, and it's in the blue. She gets it right off the bat. You don't have to play part of the game and then you get overpowered. Right off the bat, you're overpowered. It's kind of like the very first Zombicide where they had the roller skate girl. Same issue here. It's repeated here. It's never been fixed. It's always there, and it just breaks it. Now, let's say you didn't finish it in, 8 turns or whatever that you can do. Then you might actually get to orange. And if you get into orange, bam, +1 die to all combat. That's a +1 die, not a +1 2 die. In other words, you're not increasing the results. You're adding an extra die for both ranged and melee. Now, if you compare that to this soldier, right, which you think soldier should be able to attack pretty well here, and here's the base, in his orange, he only gets +1 die to melee. Again, he is inherently worse than her orange, and she's a civilian. He has 1 more armor, sure, but he's also only getting +1 die to melee. So so in red you get +1 die to range. So between these 2, you're as good as her 1 orange. Again, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. They break the game. The game is a cakewalk. It's super easy if you use any of your stretch goals like that. All right, so let's talk about Jared here. I shouldn't have put him up, I suppose. So Jared, again, starts with 3, and he has shove and +1 action, +1 die melee, all that fun stuff. Not bad. But if you look at some of the other people that come with it, again, this is pretty similar. right? Same amount of armor. Both start with shove. Everybody gets the +1 action. You then have +1 die melee, +1 die combat. Again, inherently better. Charge, hit and run. Hit and run allows you to hit in melee and then back up one. So you can essentially rarely get damaged in melee like that. Whereas charge, he just charges up to the people. I'd argue this is better, but I guess they could be interchangeable. So I'd put them at equal value. But again, same thing, better. Just inherently better. And so then you get down here and you get the +1 die ranged. Again, the melee plus the ranged equal his 1 orange. And then he can get a free combat action. Same. You can +1 die roll to melee, +1 die roll to combat. Again, better. And then you can just swap the, I guess, die range with bloodlust melee. It just doesn't work. He gets +1 die roll to his combat. He gets +1 die to his combat. Inherently better. Just a given. And then you have this, whatever his name is, again, starting in the blue, +1 die combat. That means right from the get-go, before you even have this, you're rolling 3 instead of 2. That's insane. That's really, really good. And so then, again, he gets +1 die melee, which isn't as good as this. So anything he gets here, the hit and run I said is kind of comparable, or the +1 free combat action with the extra die. Plus you get the extra action there. Again, it just is, and he's got a Reaper ranged, which again is also fantastic. All the Reapers are actually really good. Or you can get another free combat action. You have 2 free combat actions. Again, just kind of inherently better. There is no reason to pick any of the core box characters if you have the stretch goals, unless you don't want the game to be a cakewalk. If you want the game to actually be kind of difficult, then you'll gimp yourself and not even pay attention to all those awesome characters that they give you for free. It's kind of a big bummer. I know I just talked about it a lot, but I kind of wanted to explain a little bit about the heroes and how they break the game. It happens every Kickstarter with all of these Zombicide-like games. It's a big bummer, but it's just the case. They're really cool, and it's really cool, and you feel super powerful, but at the end of the day, you're just going to beat all of the scenarios, and then you're going to be done, and you won't feel the challenge to play again. At least that's been my experience. All right, the other thing about the stretch goals and the stuff you get for the Kickstarter that I want to talk about, and this is also kind of a negative to the actual, board game itself, is core box, you get the Spoiler Abomination. Okay, so you have him. You have the runners. You have the tanks. You have the workers. That's it. What you see here is all the enemies you will ever see. Over and over and over and over and over again. It's one of my huge issues with Massive Darkness as well. So when you're spawning, you'll spawn workers. Great. Then the next one, you're going to spawn hunters. Awesome. Then the next one, you're going to spawn a Spoiler Abomination. Ooh, scary. After this, you're going to spawn more workers. After that, you're going to spawn a tank. Finally, something new. That's exciting. And then workers again. And then you're going to have workers again. And then you're going to see another Spoiler Abomination if you hadn't killed that one. And then another Spoiler Abomination. That's probably game over. Again, I'll talk about that, but that's probably a game over scenario there. Or at least it has the possibility of being it. Then more hunters. Then more tanks. Then more tanks. You see the idea. The concept is you're going to see these 3 over and over and over again. For all 11 missions, this is all you will ever fight. Nothing will change. They will all act the same. They will all do the same things. The only difference between one scenario and the next is the layout of the map, and then whatever your objective typically is. And again, a lot of that is a thematic objective versus actually fundamentally trying to do different things within the game. So you're going to get tired of seeing these. You're going to get tired of spawning these. It just becomes sort of ho-hum. It's not that they're not cool. They all act differently, right? The A-bomb acts differently than the hunter. It acts different than the tank. That acts different as a worker. But at the end of the day, you're fighting 3 main enemies. Maybe a 4th one shows up. 3 enemies is not a lot of variety. It doesn't have a lot of staying power. Now, that being said, if you have the stretch goals, then you can have the worker seekers, or you can have different abominations, or flingers, or again, another abomination, or even another abomination. I don't know if I put anything else in here. I think I have at least one more somewhere. And then you have the xenomorph spawn, so another enemy. And those different enemies just add a little bit of spice. They all act slightly differently, especially once you get like the flinger, so you have something that's actually ranged, so that you might not be able to get to something that's actively attacking you versus something that's always in your face you can always attack back with. So the stretch goal enemies are good. Now, what's not good is the fact that this is actually the deck that I last played with. Now, I took a lot of these these extra ones out so I could show you what the core one is like. However, you'll notice that all the abominations add more cards, right? Now, the difference is any kind of deck you're drawing from, it's all about the ratio. And what I mean by that is how many abominations are you spawning compared to, regular enemies? Oh, see, I'm making a mess here. And when you if you added every abomination, I only added 3. And that kind of coincided with the other enemies I added. But if you added all of the spoiler or all the abominations, you would have about half your deck as abominations, if not more, when all was said and done. And the issue with that is that means you're spawning them more often. And you'll notice on a lot of these, it'll say on the bottom, number 1, all abominations on the board get 1 extra activation. Now, I mentioned that this is, if you draw them back to back, it's normally a scenario where you might die. Okay, so let's say you have Jared here, and Jared is trying to get the last objective token of the game. You've played the whole game, you've gotten all these, you're ready to get the last one, and it's kind of near a spawn point. Now, again, they're rarely this close, but sometimes they are. In fact, in this scenario, there is an objective right next to a spawn point. It's not here, but I'm just showing you here. Now, let's say that you draw the spawn card, and oh no, it was a spoiler abomination. He's going to spawn there. He wasn't there before. You had no idea what would be there. You have to go there anyway, so you went there. So now you go to the next token, and you spawn again. Now, hold on. Let me actually do this in a certain order here. Now, there's another spoiler abomination. Now, this is, again, core box. This is technically possible. Now, you only have 1, so you're not going to do 1. But number 1 says all other abominations on the board get 1 extra activation. So now he's going to move into your zone. At this point, if you do not leave or kill him before he activates again, you are dead. He will do 3 damage to you. There's no defense roll. There's nothing like that you can do. You have 3 armor. And remember, if anybody dies, you lose the game, which means that you have lost the game at the very end. Doesn't matter all the objective tokens you did. Doesn't matter how good you did. Doesn't matter all the other people. There's no resurrecting. There's no healing after the fact. You are dead. Game over. Pack up your bags. Play a different game. Set up another scenario. Retry the scenario. Go bake a cake. I don't care. You lost. Okay? Now, the problem is that technically, come on now. I just can't set this up for the life of me. Technically, there could be a third. There are enough cards to do that. If there's a third, now, albeit this is not normal, okay, but it is possible. So there is a possibility in this game that you draw it, it moves, it attacks you, you die, there's nothing you could do, nobody had an activation, it was before anything, you lost because you happened to randomly draw 3 cards. Doesn't matter how good you played, or how good you planned, or anything like that, if you draw bad, you can lose. Keep that in mind. Again, that is quite rare. The problem is that, again, especially if you want some variety, because you don't want to always fight against this guy, so if you have another one, like let's say one of these are ranged. So the issue with this is it could just shoot you. It doesn't have to move, in which case it goes down to 2 cards. If you spawn 1 and then it gets an extra activation and you happen to be within range, again, 3 damage, instant death, nothing you can do about it. Hopefully you have some piece of armor you can negate it or something like that. You're not already damaged. And that's on all of these. So the more you add, again, the more chances of these extra activations. The more the ratio of this deck changes, and the more you can lose because you drew bad cards. Additionally, it becomes kind of silly when there's 4, 5 different abominations running around, and you end up with a game where you're not fighting hordes of Xeno, you're fighting hordes of abominations. You're rarely getting these workers anymore because there's so much variety, but that's why you kind of want to limit how many of these you get. But again, the rulebook doesn't say that. It doesn't warn you about that. So unless you're thinking about the card ratio and how it works, especially if you're new, if you just bought this Kickstarter and this is your first Zombicide and you just played and you're like, look at all this cool stuff, I'm going to add all of these in so I have this nice variety deck, you're going to have a bad time. It's going to be very hard. You're going to have a whole bunch of abominations and it's going to kind of suck. Again, no rule mentions how to incorporate it or best practices or anything like that. They just kind of let you, I guess, figure it out on your own that that's a bad idea. So you do kind of have to limit that because that instant death scenario is kind of bad. And that actually brings me to a good point here. A lot of people dislike Zombicide, and a lot of people like Zombicide. And the argument I hear is that it feels like a puzzle about zombies, or in this case, Xeno. The reason people say that is because you have to play perfectly. Normally, even though you have this 3 armor, because of how many guys spawn and how much they clump together on the map tile or whatever, it typically ends up something like this, where you have something like this. Now, when this happens, you've pretty much lost the game. If you can't get in here with some more melee, because shooting will hurt him if you miss, so it's dangerous to shoot. You can't do the flamethrower, it would kill him too. So the only way in here is to get more models. So if he went forward on this, if you somehow played wrongly, or the cards or moved, an extra activation or mold spawned around you, or if you just got some bad luck, this is going to happen. And typically, again, this is actually maybe doable. It depends on your equipment and stuff like that. But you could die here and it's game over. There is no room for mistakes. Rarely will you get out of a fight with damage on you. You typically either die or you don't get hit. The moment you get hit, you're typically dead. Again, 1-hit kill. Okay, again, this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 damage if you got that. So that would suck. If you were in the scenario and they got an extra, in fact, even if the workers got an extra activation, they would attack you, 3 damage, you're dead from just the 3 workers. It makes a game where you essentially have to make a perfect run. And the problem with that is that there is a lot of randomness in the spawning. And so even with a more limited deck, even with something that has less chance of being bad luck, you can just kind of have bad luck when it comes to a string of things. So perhaps this area is okay, but in this area, you need to go get the objectives, and things just keep spawning heavily in here and less in here. You only get workers here, you're getting tanks and runners in here, something like that. That can happen. There's not a lot you can do about it. It's just kind of the luck of the draw. And you just have to try and get your perfect run with whatever the game throws at you. So that's why people view it almost like a Sudoku puzzle. It's a lot more, how can I perfectly gamify this to where we're doing the perfect thing? And that might be, sometimes you're shooting once, and then twice, and then your next action is to trade with this person, and then they're going to be doing the attacks, and then they trade with the next person. I've played games where you just trade the item around and everybody's doing it. You're essentially shooting and then throwing the gun, shooting and then throwing the gun. I mean, stuff like that happens all the time. It's sort of kind of thematic, but it's also, when you're doing it, it feels more like you're gaming the system. You're just trying to cheese your way out of a bad situation. And so that's what a lot of people view that as. Now, you might like the strategy part. You might not like the strategy part. It just kind of depends on how you like your games. But it can definitely get that puzzle feel to it because it is kind of an all or nothing. There's not really a lot of difference between 3 armor and 2 armor. You're dead either way. Now, one thing you'll note here, this is actually a scenario setup. Now, I've changed a few pieces at this point, but you will notice that there are no doors here. There are no doors on this map. In fact, there are no doors on most maps. You see, one of the things they streamlined, as I mentioned, is that you can now open a door with 1 action. I thought that was really great. A lot of times you'd start by a door in like Black Plague or something like that, and your dwarf would have an axe, and you'd be hitting that door over and over and over again. And if you rolled badly, you had to roll to open the door, you could just never open the door. You would just be hitting your axe against it and nothing would happen. You're like using the wrong hand or something. People would joke about it. It was kind of silly. I'm really glad they streamlined that. But what they ended up doing is not only did they streamline how to open the doors, they just kind of took the doors away. So there is no closing the door behind you or trying to open the door, and so it's going to take one of your actions so you can barely escape in time. None of that really happens because out of the 11 scenarios, 2 use doors. So they're essentially, and even then, when those doors are almost always like color-based, objective-based. So they just kind of removed it from the game, which I thought is kind of a bummer. It's actually a negative in my case. I like the streamlining, but all of these, like, it's just all open. You can go anywhere. You just move around. There's no doors anywhere. They're not, I mean, maybe they're all automatic and so only some are locked, but either way, gameplay wise, you're just never interacting with doors. Again, I've played a few games now and we've had doors once, and that's because I specifically picked it because I hadn't experienced doors yet. And that means I've played half the games of doors because I played one with doors. Kind of a weird thing I noticed, but yeah, I don't know. They just took away the doors. Kind of odd. Now, another thing that is an issue with Zombicide as a genre that has never been talked about or discussed or fixed or even talked about in the rulebook. I mean, there's no even real mention about it. That's overcrowding. So often you can get too many people, and in fact you can get more. Like let's add an A-bomb in here, and then let's add the 2 heroes in there too. Now at this point it gets kind of silly. It's almost manageable. The problem is this can actually get worse. This can get a lot worse. Think double the amount of people here. Now when you have double the amount of people, what I end up doing is I actually just have a pool over on the side, kind of like the Horde from Green Horde, and then we just have to mentally note that that's part of this group. Otherwise, sometimes I'll spill them out the outside, but it's very easy to then forget how to do that. There's no rule about if the models can't fit, they can't go. There's nothing like that. It doesn't even address this issue, and it happens in about a third of the games you play, depending on the playstyle of the group and obviously the game itself. But either way, it happens. If you've played the game, you know it's happened to you. It happens enough to where it's an issue, and the rules don't address this issue. And it is an issue. I need to know how to do that. I mean, if I have this guy in here too, I mean, what are we doing now? It just gets silly, and it gets worse than this. So the overcrowding issue in Zombicide still goes unchecked or unmentioned in the rulebook. There's no way to really counter it. You just kind of have to deal. Hopefully you have a flamethrower and then it's all gone. But anyway, that can happen, and it gets really, really messy, especially if you have, tokens in there and a spawn point, and it's a mess. Now, one thing you might not be able to really tell here is that these are bent. The tiles are bent. And so you get a lot of this where you have cards on the side and end up going underneath. You can have other tiles go underneath. And it's not, I mean, it's pretty obvious that there's an issue that these are bent. I mean, that is quite the bent tile there. It's not even like necessarily a little bit. So I've been trying to flatten them over time, and hopefully that'll happen. But until then, I kind of am left with this. Now, before we say, oh, it was just humidity, oh, whatever. First of all, you can make cardboard sturdy enough to withstand that. Trust me. There are other companies, there are other things besides board games. There are plenty of stuff that's cardboard that doesn't warp. So I don't want to hear that. And mainly that's because I have a game shelf full of games from CMON, from other game companies, and this is the 3rd game I have that has warped tiles. So I live in the same place. They all ship from China, it seems. So they're all going on a boat. They're all being wrapped. They're all in a cardboard box. They're all in a big container, and they all come here. I live in Idaho. It's quite dry. Our version of humid is 40 degrees, and that's, even then not very often. The point is that if that was an excuse, all of my games would have this. Not all of my games have this. So I don't know if it's the finish. I don't know if it's just the quality of the actual, inside of the cardboard here. Maybe it was just how they handled it. I don't know. All I know is that they're bent, and that sucks, especially with the miniatures game. But even just, again, this is super annoying with cards for that. And I spent a couple $100s on this. And so it sucks when I spend several $100s buying a big game, and I don't feel like it has that fit and finish with that. Going on these component qualities, a lot of some of the miniatures are bent. I'm going to go ahead and put a picture on here. I don't know if I grabbed any of them. Not all of them, but some of the bases are bent. And that is rather sucky because I have never once in my life perfectly fixed a base. I have it to where it doesn't seem to wobble, but then when I take my close-up picture after I paint it, you can see that little crease where it's slightly above, and there's that little, kind of shadow where it's like slightly lifting up somewhere, it's very hard to fix a base. It's much easier to fix a club or something like that. But a base, that really sucks. So bent bases suck. So we kind of have these bent tiles, a few bent bases, though I prefer no bent bases in my games, even ones with this mini miniatures. You have these, which again are fine, but they are quite skinny, and anything that's skinny tends to be kind of hard to pick up. These I actually haven't too much of a problem with. I have in other games, so I'm not sure what it is about this, but I've been doing pretty good with that. But they are rather skinny there. And then I've talked about this during my unboxing especially, but these tokens are not the best. They're a little bit of the cheaper quality. You can see the lines of kind of the press cardboard in there. When they punch out, they kind of, hang off by a tag and stuff like that. They get these, again, I've only played a couple times. And you'll see there's already this kind of like white, maybe you can see that, these kind of like white parts where the picture itself is starting to peel off. And this is just what I picked up. I mean, I haven't even looked at all of them, but I'm sure they're all starting to kind of get like that, where they get these little kind of white parts that'll just expand and kind of rough up. But hey, guess what? You can pay more to get the plastic token pack. Speaking of paying more for plastic tokens, I want to show you something. These are the dice I got. I paid over $300 for this game, and this is what I got. Like, I feel like I bought Yahtzee here. I cannot think of the last... Actually, I can. So, out of all of my board games, my cubes and cubes of Calic shelf games, they almost all have custom dice, except my used copy of Kingsburg, the old edition, has dice just like Zombicide, apparently. Just plain dice like my grandma would play with her dominoes or something like that. I don't know. This is upsetting. This is rude. When every one of your competitors is giving custom dice. Now, and here's my problem here. And you're probably lucky you're not seeing my face right now because I'm probably making angry faces. But I have these. You know where I got these? These cool custom Zombicide dice? From my retail edition of Zombicide Rue Morgue. It's the only other Zombicide I own, though I've played all of the others, because I have coworkers that buy them, and so I just play those. Anyway, this is what CMON used to do. Now, if you ever wanted to see the shining example of the changes in CMON when it comes to add-ons, here it is. Now, dice they've even said their #1 seller. More people will buy their custom dice than anything else. So why give you what you used to get for free when you can sell it as DLC? I mean, microtransactions. I mean, oh crap. Do you see my point? It's sucky in the video game industry and it's sucky in the board game industry. If I'm going to get Kickstarter, now there are a few reasons why you buy a Kickstarter. You buy it for a better deal. You buy it for exclusives. And I'm going to lump that exclusives in with a premium content. In other words, you're getting the collector's edition, right? Or you're buying it, let's see, I said early access, or for cheaper. In other words, you're getting a deal on it, but you might not even get it first, and you might not even get more. You get more and it's nicer, but it might even be more expensive, or you're getting it earlier. I'm trying to remember my three in what order I set them in. My point is that they are just doing them more. You get more stuff, right? Because you get you get the extra people, right? You get this stuff that breaks the game. So they give you stuff that breaks the game. They give you stuff that it actually needs, like variety, because you don't have enough types of people. But then they take over like this. It annoys me. Like, okay, fine. I get kind of, mass produced. I went to a game store and bought, whatever from whatever company tokens. But when you used to give me custom dice in a retail version, and now in my fancy Kickstarter version, I get Yahtzee dice, I'm not happy. This is stupid. Give me different dice. Now, if you want to offer, like a lot of companies will offer fancy frosted ones or fancy kind of marble ones or whatever, right? Or themed ones where the symbols change depending on what you're doing or whatever. That's fine. Do that. And I hope you sell a whole bunch. I don't mind it. But I will never, ever, ever buy custom dice when you're giving me this crap when you used to give me the good stuff. It's stupid. It's stupid and I hate it. Okay, alright, so I got that out of my system. So let's talk about the, I believe the last thing in components that I wanted to talk about, and that's these trays. These trays are nice, by the way. So they got a kind of an angle so you can angle stuff out of, except for the hero dashboard. That one's fairly locked in there. You gotta tip it upside down typically to get it out, but that's fine. And you can hold the items in there. That's pretty cool. I'm fine with that. You can slot the item underneath if you have plenty of bullets and stuff. Again, cool. That's fine. The issue I have is these trackers. So some of them work fairly okay, and none of them work excellent. Some of them work okay. Like this is okay. As long as I tend not to push down here and I just push to the side, it goes okay. And its only issue is that 0 to 1. Okay. But some of them, I'm gonna go and take out these cards just so, like, are exceptionally hard. Like getting this, when you get that first kill and you're like, oh, I got the kill. First of all, I still can't quite get it to 0. But when you get the first kill, you're like, I got 1 XP, and you're gonna push, and then eventually you get it to the yellow. I'm not trying to be obnoxious here, guys. You know I'm just trying to be honest. This is embarrassing, and 3 of our tiles like that are this bad. Now, I haven't taken this clip out. I know technically you can. They give you a few extra and tried another one. But to be honest, I shouldn't have to. Like, part of your quality control check in the factory should be to slide one of these suckers and see if you can get it to 0. There we go. Got it to 0. Now, again, that's terrible. That shouldn't be allowed. You got to check that in the factory before you ship that to me, hopefully. Now, I mentioned bent bases, but overall, the miniatures are actually quite good. So you saw it in my unboxing. You're seeing it now. They are actually very nice. There's some good detail, nice crisp lines. There a lot of them are multi-piece. The poses are actually kind of impressive. Like they're not bad at all, and I'd be happy painting them. I'm satisfied with the minis, even with the bent bases, though bent bases do kind of suck. Now this isn't quite actually a negative, though I will mention it. The orange and yellow pegs here look fairly similar. Side by side, they look okay, but if I see just an orange one, I'm tempted to give it to the yellow player saying, hey, you forgot this. I say that because I actually did that. So as a colorblind person, especially around the orange, the oranges and yellows, they could be closer or more different. Additionally, the blue is quite dark. I would have liked a lighter blue, so it just didn't look like it barely looks blue to me. I mean, I know it is, and I'm not saying it doesn't look blue. I'm just saying I would have liked it a lighter blue. It really, they're just should have been designed and colored with some colorblind players in mind. All right, let's talk about the rulebook. Now, first of all, I like the rulebook. I like it because it has an index. Obviously, I'm in love with it, and I want to marry it because it's got an index. No, in all seriousness, no, the index is great. The fact that the skills are in the back, kind of right next to that, again, great because you're going to be looking up those. I don't care about the missions. The flow of the rulebook was, fine. The call outs were all good. I liked all of those. The game component list here is fantastic where I see all the different things. So that's good. I appreciate that, minus those dice. I mean, even this, again, it's a great list here. They just did a quite good job showing line of sight and how that works and how attacks work and whatnot. Good rulebook. Now, what I don't like about it necessarily is the fact that this is all you get. You don't get player aids. This is a 6+ player game, and there are no player aids. So if anybody forgets the player phase, you're handing this around to everybody. You can't even possibly keep it in the middle of people. I mean, I guess maybe if you did that, you could. I don't know. Because the board's in the middle, I'm assuming. not all in like a line or something. If you need to figure out the targeting priority because you're not used to it, or you forget how much the Abomination XP is or whatever, again, it's only on the back here. Now, the worst part is at the beginning when people are picking their characters and they're wanting to know what the shove, melee, Reaper, bloodlust stuff is, because again, you only have it listed in the back here. So typically, I'm the one doing this, but one person has this open and everybody asks them questions and then they pick their character either first or last while everybody else is trying to wonder what all of these skills are. The skills are nice. I like them. But again, without a player aid, you just have one person doing it. So if you ever have to look it up again, well, here you are back here looping through this big thing. So, and then, obviously all the missions are here too. So I'm fine with that, but some player aids would have been nice, especially if you're accepting so many players. Because you have a perfect player aid right here. Here it is right there. And then on the back, you can list hopefully all the skills. I don't know. It looks like they take up maybe a bit too much for 2. I don't know how you'd figure it out, but maybe even omit this and just have targeting priority and skills. Maybe just the skills. I don't know. It'd just be nice. Now, another thing that this rulebook does is it actually mentions expansions. I always try to mention this because I think some people are a little triggered about this. I'm undecided. Sometimes I feel like it's inappropriate to mention stretch goal or expansion stuff in a rulebook because it's just kind of showing, hey, you don't have everything. But other times it's kind of nice to have it all in one place too. So there's pros and cons. The problem is the expansion stuff has their own rule books that you need, so it's not like it's all in one place. So here to talk about swapping bots and sentry guns, but this only matters if you've bought an expansion. It has nothing to do with what this is actually explaining to you. There's mention of dark zones as well on both the item cards and this, but again, dark zones are in a paid for expansion that you might not have, in which case it's just kind of odd. Like I think in one of the callouts it mentions how, hey, dark zones are in an expansion, so just ignore it. But if it doesn't say that, I can't quite remember. You're gonna be like, you might not know that expansion exists. In which case you're like, why is it talking about this? It doesn't make any sense. So that could be kind of a bummer. And then additionally, the only other thing I noticed, and I don't know if I'll be able to find it quite right off the bat here, page 25. Thankfully, I noted these things. So on page 25, it's going to have a copy-paste error. Again, very minor stuff here. Oh, look, it's right here anyway. So the Falcon Sentry Gun also mentions the Peacekeeper bots. It's the exact same sentence. It just copy-pasted the ranged action here. And it didn't change what it's talking about. Other than that, quality rule book. Enjoyed the read. Taught me everything I need to know about Zombicide. Became a subject matter expert on the whole game, obviously, from that. All right, so let's take a deep dive into these missions real quick, because one of the things I like about them right here is this up here, the easy 6+ survivor 60 minutes. I like the kind of time estimate, and it changes depending on what it is you're doing. So this one's 90, there's even 121, and then it kind of tells you, hey, how difficult it might be. What it doesn't mention is all of them are easy if you're using stretch goal heroes, but that's, I guess, besides the point. And then it'll tell you if you have a door or not. They typically don't. So this is something you're gonna have to deal with. The special rules. So the diagram's nice. This little bit here is nice. The layout's nice. I will say though, only having 11 is on the lighter side, to the point where it might have fewer scenarios than really any of my other games, which is kind of a bummer. There's just not actually a lot here. So by the time you've played, mission 10, there's technically mission 0, which is a tutorial mission, so I don't know if you want to count that or not. You've played all of the scenarios in Zombicide. Now, that coupled with the fact that there are only 4 enemy types and 6 heroes, more on that in a bit, it just feels light on content. There's not actually a lot here. I like the scenarios, and this is why it's kind of hard, because I don't want to do a quantity over quality, but more quality and more quantitative quality is certainly more welcome. It's just something to note. With this, you're going to play it 10 times plus the tutorial, and then you've played everything in the game. Now, you can replay them. The replay value is pretty high, but when all said and done, you've played it 10 times and that's it. Compared to a lot of the games that come with 15, 20, 25, 30 scenarios this is quite light on content. Now, I mentioned the heroes, and the reason I mentioned the heroes is because there's actually only 6. Now, at one point, I'm, commenting that this many heroes aren't necessary, right? You don't need this many. However, you probably want more than 6 too. And the reason is just because once you've leveled Jared up, you've seen everything Jared can do. You might get a new item, but again, the item variety isn't huge, especially when it comes to these prototype weapons here. And so you're doing the same stuff over and over and over again. And Jared will always be shoving and always be having a charge. And speaking of just kind of the characters in general, a lot of the stuff isn't actually something you do. So +1 die in your melee, that's grabbing another die. It's not necessarily, while you're getting stronger, you're not doing anything different, right? Charging and shoving are different. Getting an extra die here, an extra die here, another one of the combat actions you can already do here. So of this, only 2 of these are actually something unique. Shove and charge. Same with, let's say Mitsuki here, right? And so of this, all of this stuff is not actually something you're doing. Sprint and remote control bot are the only kind of changes here, that you feel like, oh, now I can do this. If that makes sense, like now I can sprint. That's a lot different than adding 1 to your die when you roll it. So once you've leveled her up, you've leveled her up. Now, so unless you're swapping characters each time, in which case you can play 6 games before you've seen all the heroes, it's just not a lot of variety. Additionally, when it comes down to it, so she can remote control bot and sprint, he can shove and charge. There's heroes in this game tend not to play differently. So I mentioned these guys, right? But they don't actually play it a lot differently. Just because he can remote control all versus remote control bot doesn't mean it's any different. Like you can remote control a different thing, but it's still remote controlling. None of them do truly unique actions that feel super wholesome. Charging, again, kind of cool, sprinting around the board. Yeah, that's kind of neat, I suppose. But in general, they all feel kind of like a melting pot of the same character, especially when there's not much difference, 3 versus 2 armor. I can search here, you can search there. But you don't feel that so much. So when the civilians mowing down people, they feel just as much of a soldier as a soldier, and one soldier compared to another soldier don't feel a ton different. So there's just not a lot of variety kind of in general, both from the scenarios and the amount that they have there to the heroes and the amount that they give you there. It just feels quite light. And really, what more can I say? I love rolling dice. I like being able to roll dice, even if they're stupid dice that are plain and came from a Yahtzee box. And, killing a whole bunch of guys and gaining my XP if I can move the XP tracker. There we go, I did it. And leveling up and getting the new thing. So now I roll even more dice. And so I got more dice and I can just roll more and hit more. And when you're shooting Uzis and you got 2 of them, it just feels awesome. Or SMGs. I mean, there's a lot of fun with just the rolling the dice and the killing, and especially because combat is typically so quick too. There are no defense rolls, so you roll your dice, you do your damage, you're done, you get your XP, everything is in a snap, and I really like the combat flow there. The fact that I roll the dice, I see 1/6, that means 1's dead, boom, got it, I'm gonna roll again, need a 5+, I got, 2 5s there, 2 more dead, bam, bam, 2 more XP, oh, that gives me another action, which means I'm totally going to attack again, because that's the funnest thing in this game. And look at that, I got another 2, a 6 and a 5. Not enough for the tank, or whatever. The point is that the general flow of the game, of the moving, of the trading, of the looting, of the searching, of the attacks, is it's super streamlined, which I like. It's a lot of fun, and I just tend to enjoy playing it. I have a lot of complaints. I know I nitpick. I know I focus on the minutia. I know I get super angry about dice. But at the end of the day, this is a fun game. Now, is it for everybody? No, of course not. Is it for me in the style of games I like? Yes. Is it the best game I like? No, but it is a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun to be had once you get the variety down, once you fine tune the heroes that are super overpowered that you'll never play again. Once you figure that out, the game is quite fun, and I look forward to playing through the short list of scenarios in this and then going on to the expansions. Now, I kind of mentioned the soldier and civilian difference, and while I pointed that out, I was like, oh, there's not much. That's kind of my point. I appreciate what's there, and I wish they doubled down on it. I wish that playing a civilian fundamentally felt different than playing a soldier, where you felt kind of scared when enemies are coming, but you can get... you can do quite well. In fact, with the machines, typically, especially if you're moving with the machine, which I also kind of wish that happened more often, or that was definitely the strategy to go, or easier to do. You feel like your machine's doing it, and you almost feel like a pet class in an RPG, which is, I love pet classes. That's a lot of fun. But besides that, I can equip the same items, I can use the same items, and I use them pretty much just as well too. Typically, Mitsuka is doing just as much damage as Jared's doing to these guys. There's not a whole big amount of difference between that. She can definitely hold her own and should not feel like she's more vulnerable than the soldier. So I wish they had kind of increased that a bit, perhaps with different game elements, perhaps just with some fine-tuning of the skills that they get. I'm not sure. It's not my job. I'm not the game designer. I'm just the person that's telling you what I thought about it. And what I thought about it is I would like more difference between the two. I want to see that continued because I like that kind of, it's not asymmetrical. And I think maybe that's my issue here. It just feels fairly similar. All right, let's talk about storage. Now, storage here, the issue here is there's no top lid. There should be a top lid. Anytime you got miniatures, have a top lid. You can see my unboxing now, and as you can see in shipment, or if you store it vertically too long, or if you drop it and it tumbles or anything like that, they can come out of here because this is not dimpled. So you'll notice here on this one, which they added a lid to, you'll see these, and these hold the miniatures in. That's not on this cardboard, therefore it's not really doing a lot. These are what's holding it in, not just the lid. And so you need those or it doesn't work. So this top one, again, should have a lid. Now, my other issue here is, obviously overlays. So when I'm looking at this, for this one, I have to kind of like look over here and see that that's kind of the difference. And they didn't like... Let's see, one of my guys popped out anyway. They didn't really like number them well. So like I see here, this is 085, and this one is 085. So this is 085, but it doesn't tell me 085 is here. And that's, it would be nice because especially these sculpts tend to look the same. The tear down and the setup's fine. The tear down is a bit long. Because they really need an image underneath that just shows you exactly the miniature that goes where, and then ideally have some kind of number there. Additionally, if they went from the clear plastic to a colored plastic, you could see the shape a bit more. It would help with the reflection, so you could kind of tell where things go that way too. That's another way to improve the storage, which again would help with the teardown. Alright, so what do I think about Zombicide Invader overall? Well, the game is a lot of fun, and it is an enjoyable experience every time. But with so little enemy variety and just a double handful of scenarios, I'd recommend an expansion or two if you plan on really investing into the game, because the core box alone just doesn't have a lot of oomph to it. Now, the new streamlined rules are a welcome improvement, but the loss of some strategic elements, such as the borderline elimination of doors, is really a trend I don't like to see, and I hope that that's actually reversed. So it's a fun game. There's a okay amount of content here, but it's skirting on the low end of the barely minimum acceptable amount of content, especially from a Kickstarter game. Normally they are packing these boxes, and so you can tell this is very retail and very expansion driven, but quality is good. I like what I get. I enjoy playing it. I'll be continuing to play it. And so that's kind of my overall review of Zombicide Invader by CMON. Now, I don't give ratings out, but I know a lot of people love ratings, so I rate this 32 spiders out of a possible 13 vacuum cleaners.